Hi everyone, this is Mix from 16PH, and today we have the detailed review on the Adidas Harden Volume 6 Pulse Aqua. Before we get started, if you do like the video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any comments, questions, or any suggestions for future videos, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below as well. And I'll also be leaving a link to the SNBPH Sneaker Hunters Facebook group in the description box, so I do hope you can join us over there because that is a place where we talk about sneakers and basketball a bit. And that's also where we have the SNBPH Steel Cabinet, where I, as well as a lot of our other members, take some shoes that we no longer use and put them up for bidding at way below market value. Then if you haven't already yet, please do make sure to sub to the channel because it really does help us out quite a lot. Then with that being said, we have the detailed review on the Adidas Harden Volume 6. Before we get into the shoe itself, as a Philadelphia 76ers fan, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to James Harden. And I just hope that he could help us make a deep playoff run, and who knows, maybe we can make the finals and win the championship. Of course, James Harden has been dealing with quite a few injuries over the past couple of years, and he also has a history of butting heads with his co-stars, but I definitely hope that even though it is a risk, that it will pay off in the end. But anyway, having said that, we do have the Harden Volume 6, and I was definitely interested on how Adidas would respond because the Harden Volume 5 was just straight up garbage, and was actually, in my opinion, the most disappointing shoe of last year. I think it's safe to say with how the Harden Volume 5 performed last year, there really aren't like high expectations on the Harden Volume 6, but I am happy to say that it definitely rectified a lot of the things that made the Harden Volume 5 bad, and overall I think this has the potential of being a pretty solid hoop shoe. Of course, the Harden Volume 6 has its flaws, and there are definitely some aspects of the shoe that I don't like, so to get into more detail, let's take a look at the tech specs. So starting off with the traction, you do have a solid rubber outsole with a full-length herringbone traction pattern. Like I always say, you can't go wrong with herringbone. I mean, it's pretty much gonna work well as long as you have a pretty decent rubber compound. And with the Harden Volume 6, I think it just proves this tried and true formula. I did try these out here at home, and it does seem like the rubber is pretty tacky, and combined with that herringbone traction pattern, it was gripping pretty well. Of course, I will be trying these out for a couple of weeks, but my first impressions are definitely that it's a pretty grippy outsole, and the only real concern I do have is here on this gray part on the lateral side of the forefoot, because the herringbone pattern is a bit tighter here and more narrow, so it might end up clogging up with dust a bit faster than the rest of the outsole. Then for the durability of the outsole, I do think the rubber is a bit on the softer side, but the grooves are pretty deep and pretty thick, except of course for this gray portion where the pattern is a lot thinner. I think essentially the negative of having that soft rubber is sort of counteracted by having those thick grooves, so I think the durability on the outsole would be anywhere from average to slightly above average. Then moving on to the cushion, this is definitely the biggest departure from last year's shoe because instead of having that Lightstrike cushion like we had on the Harden Volume 4 and 5, Adidas actually ended up bringing back a full-length boost. Full-length boost was actually the main cushion of choice for Harden's first 3 signature models, and for the Harden Volume 6, it's not only that full-length boost that's sort of a flashback to the early Harden models, but the way that that boost cushion is set up on the shoe, it's actually almost the same as the Harden Volume 1. I mean, the boost midsole on the Harden Volume 6 is pretty much the exact same thickness as the one on the Harden Volume 1, and just like the Harden Volume 1, the midsole is caged here on the lateral side, while the boost is exposed here on the medial side. I'm definitely happy that boost is back in the Hardens because I did sort of miss it in the Harden Volume 4 and 5, just because Lightstrike never really replaced that plushness that you felt with boost. I mean, of course, Lightstrike is a bit more responsive and way more lightweight, but in my opinion, Boost just has a lot more impact protection, plushness, and overall comfort. Of course, like I said a while ago, the thickness of the Boost is pretty much the same as the Volume 1, which does mean that even though it's gonna be pretty comfy, especially once you break it in, it's not gonna be anything too crazy, and it won't have like that super boosty feel of like an Ultra Boost, or maybe like those Yeezy 350 V2s, just because those have a lot more boost in them. So in the end, what you do get with the cushion is lots and lots of impact protection from that boost, and a bit of some nice plushness and softness, especially once you break it in. You also definitely feel pretty low to the ground, stable and responsive, and if you did enjoy the cushion setup on the Harden Volume 1 6 years ago, then you're definitely gonna enjoy these. Then moving on to the materials, this is definitely the part I dislike the most on the shoe, just because I don't understand why in the world they would use a material like this. Basically what you do have with the Harden Volume 6 is just one whole material that goes all the way around, and I was just definitely confused when I took these out of the box, because I didn't really know what they were trying to do here. I'm not sure if they were going for a synthetic leather or a synthetic nubuck for the upper, but in the end it's so cheap feeling in hand that it basically feels like a pretty stiff felt. I honestly just don't know why they chose that material for the upper, because it just looks cheap and feels cheap in hand, doesn't have any breathability to it, and I also think given that felt-like texture, this also won't age well and might end up not being durable long term. On a positive note though, it does seem to move well with your foot, and it's way softer than the upper on the Harden Volume 5, which isn't saying much because that upper was just super stiff, but in the end it's still an improvement. For the other materials though, you do have a light and airy mesh tongue, which I do like. You also have a pretty padded sock liner as well, with these absolutely massive Achilles and ankle pillows. You also do have quite a few overlays on the shoe with the synthetic leather, and the synthetic leather that they used here is just definitely super cheap feeling and super thin. And I do understand that they tried to put like a premium touch, but in the end I just personally think that if you're not gonna try and do something well, then you might as well just not do it at all. Overall, the materials are just pretty confusing. I really don't see any reason why you would use like a thick felt material, but it definitely does work better than the upper on the Harden Volume 5. Then moving on to fit and sizing, I did go through the size with the Harden Volume 6, and it fits me pretty well. Here at the midfoot and heel of the shoe, the fit is pretty much spot on, but here at the forefoot it does fit a bit roomy because there is quite a bit of extra length. The Harden Volume 6 is definitely a pretty long and narrow shoe, so if you have a narrow foot, I would suggest going down half a size so that you could kind of fill up that toe space. But if you have a normal width foot, you might be better off going through the size, and if you have a wide foot, I would recommend either going through the size or up half a size. That extra length wasn't really bothersome though when I was moving around, because the lacing system as well as that insane padding here at the heel really did a good job to keep you locked into the shoe. Oh, and if you were wondering, these stretchy rope bungees here at the heel and here at the forefoot, they don't really do much in terms of fit, and they're really more for aesthetics. Speaking of those aesthetics, for the aesthetic details, you do have a pretty quirky looking shoe, and there are definitely a lot of blobs on the shoe, and this does seem like a theme because it's also on the box and it was also on the Harden Volume 5. So I don't know, maybe James Harden or someone on the design team just has a thing for blobs. Starting off with the outsole though, it is mostly yellow-green, with a bit of grey here at the lateral side of the forefoot, and a bit of blue here on the 3 stripes on the lateral side of the heel. Then here at the midfoot, you do have a torsional plate that's pretty similar to the ones on the Harden Volume 1, and this is in orange with the Adidas logo. Then moving on to the midsole, the rubber does come up here on the lateral side to gauge that cushion, and it does have a pretty interesting sort of Adidas 4D texture to it, and it also does have a sort of wave shape. Then here on the lateral side, you do have that white boost that's exposed, and you also do have a bit of boost branding here on the medial side of the forefoot. Then for the upper, it is mostly aqua blue, but you do have some hits of neon green, orange, and gray. And for your pieces of branding, you do have Harden's logo on this leather patch on the forefoot, HV6 on the nylon tab at the base of the lacing, and on the tongue pull tab, you have James Harden Signature Series on one, and James Harden Signature on the other. Then lastly, here at the heel, you have HV6 on that rubber at the back, and on the orange heel tab, you have half dozen, as well as the Adidas 3 stripes. Then moving on to the overall aesthetics, this is definitely a pretty weird and quirky looking shoe, and in the first 2 colorways that Adidas released, it just ended up making it look even quirkier and even weirder. Harden definitely makes interesting style choices, and his shoes also look pretty interesting for the most part, and I guess this shoe is right in line with the theme, because it definitely doesn't look like any other shoe that's ever been made. And with this colorway just being so bright and so loud with these very weird colors mixed together, I think it's needless to say that you're really gonna stand out with this shoe. That's definitely a good thing if you really want to be unique, but I just don't think this is everyone's cup of tea, especially with the 2 launch colorways given this aqua and lime green look, and the other colorway which is just basically a muted and lot less bright version of this. There are definitely more traditional and more normal colorways on the way though. If you're not really a fan of just like sticking out like a sore thumb on court, then those definitely will be a better option. Overall, for the aesthetics, I just think it's super weird looking, and it's one of those shoes that I just thought that, when I had them in hand and had it on foot, it might change my initial impression on how it looked, but it never really did change, and even now after I've tried these on and had them for a couple of days, it still is for me one of the quirkiest basketball shoes, if not the quirkiest basketball shoe you can get right now. Then moving on to the price, the Adidas Harden Volume 6 retails for 7,000 pesos here in the Philippines, or $140 US. With that price tag, it does sit in that Kyrie 8 range, and I do think this is pretty worth it if you're just looking at the boost cushion, but the materials on the upper are definitely not worth $140, and it really is just, in my opinion, the biggest turnoff on the shoe. I definitely am still gonna try these out on court though and give them a chance, because who knows, even though it looks and feels pretty cheap, the materials might perform really well on court. I did get my pair over at the Adidas website and they do have 2 colorways available, but if you're not really into these loud and quirky colors, just be patient because there will be more colorways on the way. The Harden Volume 6 is also now available in the US, so if you are from the US and you want a pair, just go to the Adidas website or your local Adidas stores. So there you have it guys, that was my detailed review on the Adidas Harden Volume 6 Pulse Aqua. Once again, if you do like the video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. Then if you haven't already yet, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon for notifications. And as always, whether you're looking for that retail win, or if KD doesn't want to pick you on his all-star team, just keep on hunting.